John Florez, the student becomes John Florez, the staff producer at RCA. Like, how does that begin? And yeah, I'll just let you tell the tale.
There were two spiritual moments, and I was in these, I was an agnostic. I was 21, 22 years old. So I didn't know what that was about. And I was a senior at Arizona State in communications saying, oh, I don't know, they're teaching us fonts. What am I gonna, I don't care about fonts. I'm in the studio in Phoenix making local records, and I'm having a blast thinking, boy,
Yeah.
that would be fun. And I'm traveling to LA and New York, ditching school and taking my little acetates around pre-cassette days and walking in, because you could in those days, and
Sure.
handing them out to A&R guys and saying, what do you think? And nothing really came of that. My band that I was the leader of, we went into the studio here in Arizona, and the owner of Audio Recorders, where they did the Duane Eddy sessions and the initial Waylon Jennings sessions and things like that. My band was in there, and my guys threw me out of playing on the tune Broadway, on Broadway.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
they
yeah.
said, John, why don't you sit in the control room next to Tim, the engineer, and just sit this one out? So they kicked me out of the studio, and I sat down next to Tim Ramsey, the owner's son, the engineer, and said, there was like a spiritual awakening. It was, oh my God, this is where I belong.
Wow.
In the control room of a recording studio. So I kept doing it, and Floyd Ramsey introduced me. He said, you got to meet this guy, Ray Cork. He's an arranger. And I said, hey, great. And Ray and I did 2-3 things together, one of which was an artist by the name of Ronnie David, who was a Liberace protege and managed by Liberace's manager, this singer, pianist. And we did a full orchestra thing that Ray arranged on him. And Ronnie David, the artist, took that master to RCA New York and met a man by the name of Don Berkheimer, who was head of A&R at RCA New York. And Ronnie came back to town, and I said, hey, did you get a deal? And he said, no, but Mr. Berkheimer, he wants to know who the kid is that produced this thing. And
Well,
said,
then.
and he wants you to call him. So I called him, and he said, John, an opening will be coming up at RCA LA office for an A&R guy, and I want you to call Joe Reisman, who's head of A&R on the West Coast. Well, I didn't. And I didn't because I wasn't ready. I didn't think I had enough chops, and I was still in school, and I didn't know. So I ditched school again and cut a session in LA. Ray and I flew over there and did that together. And Ben Barrett, who contracted the musicians, that's the guy that will, if you call him, he'll hire everybody that you want to play on the dates. He calls me the next morning at the motel, and he says, young man, he said, you have a kind of a really special way of working with people in the studio. I'm blown away. And he said, I'd like to take you over to RCA in an hour or two and have you meet Joe Reisman. And I thought, well, this is odd. Now, flashback 6 months prior, I'm at the Playboy Club in Phoenix, and there's a psychic performing. I didn't know, I've never even heard of a psychic before. And he's in the main room at the Playboy Club, and my friends are the jazz trio in the lounge. So we, with the band, are standing at the door watching the audience watch this psychic, Dr. Richard Ireland. And the band has to go back and play again, so I'm leaving with them. And this guy, Dr. Ireland, he's blindfolded, and he has tape over his eyes and blindfolds and whatever. And I'm leaving from the very back of the room, and he says, John. And I keep walking because I'm not in the audience. He says, no, John Florez. And I turn around, and he said, you are going to have a job at a major label this fall. And I said, right.
Well,
And walked away. And just put that in the back of my head. Now here I am 6 months later, sitting with Joe Reisman, and Dr. Ireland had said, there will be a meeting that you'll be in at a major label with two older guys and you offering to hire you. Well, that's exactly what happened. And Joe Reisman said, wait a minute, John Florez, and he pulls open his desk drawer and he says, look, you're number 2 on our list of possible hires. And here I am, I'm still in college, I'm a senior at ASU. And I said, he said, well, Don Berkheimer said you were supposed to call me. And I said, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I didn't have the chops. I wasn't ready. So I said, just out of curiosity, who's number 1 on your list? And he said, well, a guy by the name of David Gates. And David Gates would become the lead singer and writer and behind the group Bread. You know, I want to make it with you, and if a picture paints 1,000 words, la la la. Well, I already knew of David's work, and I said to Joe, I said, my God, Joe, he's really good and he's experienced. Why don't you hire him? And Joe says, because he wants a salary, John. We think you're willing to work for next to nothing. You're a student. We would bet on the fact we could have you pretty cheap.
Classic business people, right?
I said, oh my God, okay, yeah, you're right. And he said, and I'll give you 1 year at that nothing salary, which was $8,400 a year. And if you haven't had a hit within 1 year, then, you know, go back to school, do whatever you want. But you got a year starting this fall, just like Dr. Ireland predicted. So I started in the fall of '68 and almost immediately called David Gates and said, you know, forget your production. I love your production, but you're a great singer and songwriter. Why let me sign you? And he said, I thought the irony would be great. You know, the guy who's number 1 on the list gets the artist deal instead of the low paying thing that I got.
That's funny.
David said, well, you know, we have a deal pending. This new group I put together, Bread, it might be with Elektra, but boy, if they don't sign us, I'm coming to see you, John. And the rest of that is history.